Like the rest of the Phoenix Suns season, the debut of the Big Three on Wednesday night featured a lot of good, some bad, and a bunch of inconsistency. We'll break it down on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show. Wherever you get your podcast, a big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen post-game after the Suns 116-112 loss to the Brooklyn Nets. The return of Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, as well as the debut of the Suns' Big Three. I appreciate you spending the night with me, maybe the morning of Thursday. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so if you have not already, please hit follow or subscribe. Get this show in your feed wherever you're finding us today, every Monday through Friday, through the rest of the season. Become an everydayer with the show and get locked onto the Suns right along with me every day from here on out. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. FanDuel, sorry. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 straight to your account if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. More from FanDuel later on in the show. But let's get right down to it. The Phoenix Suns lose, as I've said multiple times, and you already know. And so what we're going to do today is a little different than normal. No moment of the game, big takeaway, rapid fire. We're going to basically look at why the Suns lost and why the Nets won, if that makes sense. But specifically, let's spend this first segment talking about what I know you guys want to hear my thoughts on, which is the Big Three, how they fit, how they struggled, what we saw, what we can learn from their debut together in a game that I frankly did not expect to happen so quickly. I did not think we would see the debut tonight. I didn't know if Beal would play the back-to-back, and then obviously Vogel said on Tuesday night that he would. When we talked to Vogel about Durant on Tuesday night, it didn't necessarily seem like he was close, but they both come. They both play, they're both active, and they both play a lot of minutes. Durant had no minutes restriction, played 38 in his first game back. It seems like he, if it was a postseason situation, probably wouldn't have even missed any time with that ankle sprain. Beal played 27 minutes on Tuesday night. I would guess that they were trying to keep him around 25, but then tonight he played 34. So they played, and they played a lot. My observations are, I feel like a coach or a player at a press conference sometimes doing these shows right after the buzzer, because to me it's a lot of the time like I need to go back and watch the film. And it is true, but I'm going to do my best here. And what I think I would say is that there were a lot of really high highs, even if it doesn't feel like it with a 112 situation. 112 points scored is not a game you would typically look at and say that there were high highs, but Booker was plus 16 in his 40 minutes, and minus 20 in the 8 minutes that he sat. I mean, that's the story of the game. The first quarter, Booker does not take a shot. He doesn't have the luck of, Okogie and Metu hitting threes. And so, unlike Tuesday night against the Warriors, the Suns only score 22 points in that first quarter, and they're down 9, and that put them behind the 8 ball the rest of the night. But in terms of the highs, I mean, we saw a lot of small ball from this Suns team tonight because Drew Eubanks didn't work, and, Nurkic can only play so much, and the Nets like to go small. They only played their centers a combined 41 minutes, so that was 7 minutes with no center, but even when they do have Claxton or Sharp, they're pretty small, and the Suns even were fine having small ball out there against Claxton and Sharp, so that affected things, but really the reason the highs were there is the Suns' best players made the very easy, straightforward plays that I think are going to materialize for them when they play together. You know, there were times when the Nets went to zone or kind of press defenses where the Suns just found the open man. And when that's Booker and or Durant, it doesn't get much easier than that. And it was, I guess I should say, Beal and or Durant, and it was that a lot of the time. Beal made his first 3 shots. They were running him off ball a little bit, but then, you know, later on, there were some moments where it just, I think 8:25 of the fourth quarter was one where the Nets just crashed in and kind of tried to take away the paint after they had tried to get the ball out of Booker's hands, and the ball's just, or the shot's just wide open for Beal on the backside in the right corner. You know, I would even say Durant's first 3, which I believe he missed, was an open one on the wing, you know, his signature shot basically, and a spot-up 3 that's either open or lightly contested for any of those guys is going to be a win. You know, all of them shot better than 50% from the field. I loved that all of them had at least 4 assists, and obviously Booker had 12. If you add all that up, they combined for 20 assists and just 6 turnovers. That's, you know, better than 3-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio among all of them. So it wasn't just Booker, even though he led the way. You know, like this whole Suns team, which I'll get to in the next segment as far as how the Nets won this game, we probably feel a lot different about this if Beal gets up more threes and the other 2 guys just make more of their threes, because Booker and Durant combined to go 3 of 11 from deep. But everything else you would have wanted to see from this big 3, even though it can be clunky, even though there are still sets where when they get slowed down, there's not a lot of structure to the offense. You can say all of that, and still the free throws, the passing, the efficiency was all there. The threes were not. And that's, you know, in large part the difference in the game, you know. And this is not me making excuses. I know people are disappointed. You get the thing we've been waiting for, and it's a loss to a 500, you know, let's say like a 45-win pace type of team. That's not what anybody wants the Suns to be losing to at home. But we also just have to be realistic. The Suns had a 119.4 offensive rating in this game. This was a little bit of a slower-paced game. There were not a lot of turnovers on either side. There were quite a few free throws on either side. And so that factors in when you're just looking at, okay, 112 points. Like, you know, you look over at Pacers-Bucks on the other side of the conference, and it's not there, but the Suns were efficient. So we'll get to in a second the things that Brooklyn did, the things that the Suns were not able to stop them from doing. I think that, you know, the bench minutes, the staggered moments, times when there's not a lot of spacing out there, those continue to be issues. The Suns give up runs too often. They leave three-point shooters open. There are things that, of course, need to be fixed, and I'll continue to hammer those, including in just 1 minute as I get to the next segment. But we didn't see bad late-game turnovers. You know, I think the rotation is starting to sort itself out. They're finding small ball looks, and bigger than anything, the big 3 individually, even if the sum is not yet greater than its parts, they did all the things that they're supposed to do outside of win the game. So let's get to why they didn't, because I'm not letting anybody off the hook. I'm going to break that down too. We'll do it in just a moment. Before that, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, the best place to make a bet. And as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 straight into your account if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. As I've said time and again, cash in on this offer by betting a big favorite at home. A big moneyline favorite at home. This weekend for the NFL, you have the Miami Dolphins minus 430 at home. That is delicious. That's exactly what you want. If you want to go to the NBA side, on Thursday night, we have the Denver Nuggets minus 500 favorites at home against the Brooklyn Nets on the second night of a back-to-back with travel. So there you go. After you do that, the app is easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options beyond those money lines, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to celebrate the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, let's keep it rolling. Phoenix Suns lose. Why did they lose? I'll break it all down. Want to remind you first, though, to sign up for the Locked On Suns Insider text alerts where you can get my first reaction to all Suns news. Basically, I'll go on Twitter so you don't have to. Think of it that way. I will scour the internet so you don't have to, and I'll text you what you need to know about what's going on with the Suns. You get exclusive game day content and observations straight from Footprint Center. I've been delivering on that this week. Steve Nash intel, revenge game stuff from last week, all the guys on the Kings. I'm trying to snap pictures and videos of stuff as I can. Going to the press conferences, so you get all that. And then once per week, you get a video link to your phone that is exclusive to Locked On Suns Insider subscribers, where I break something in Suns land down for 10 to 15 minutes deep in the film of the team. This week will obviously be about how this big three is coming together, and that's only for you guys. Join the Locked On Suns Insiders now and be in the know all the time. Click the link in the show description or visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. Again, click that link in the show description below or visit joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSuns. Okay. That all said, here we go. Why did the Nets win the game? I would say it was a few things, but I think the place that I look first and foremost is how they closed the first quarter. They put Cam Johnson on the court, I believe, to complete their small ball lineup and this was not even like a Spencer Dinwiddie or Cam Thomas small ball lineup. This was like medium ball is a better term for it. Mikal, Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, Cam Johnson, Trendon Watford. That was the lineup for the last minute and 10 seconds of the quarter for Brooklyn, and I think it caught the Suns off guard. I don't think that they expected the Nets to go to that so early. I don't think Sharp played in the first quarter. So the Nets basically just said the backup for Claxton is small ball. And I think that caught the Suns off guard. I think Eubanks continuing to struggle didn't help matters. I asked Frank Vogel about the Eubanks lineups and how they both last night and tonight struggled, and he kind of protected the player, I guess, and didn't give me a lot, but it's clear that's what's going on. And the Nets proceeded to go on an 11-0 run, and that extended into the second quarter and became a 19-0 run, I believe. By that point, the Nets are up, I believe, 17, if that's possible. No, it might not have been 17. Double digits for sure. And that's a hole that the Suns can't afford to have to dig themselves out of. So I think the aggressiveness with that stuff matters. Again, not to be like, player coach at a press conference about it. The threes continue to be an issue for the Suns. There's no way around that. But I don't really feel like I personally was watching tonight's game feeling like the Suns were giving up awful, wide open, brain flub threes. I don't. But you might disagree, and that's fine. The reality is it's an issue. So it doesn't really matter how bad they might have looked in real time because it keeps happening. it's weird, though, because if you listen to the Locked On Suns preview show that I did ahead of the game in the afternoon on Wednesday, which is on the audio feed only, if you want to check those out, you heard me talking about how the numbers don't really back that up. The Suns are allowing the 7th fewest opponent threes as a proportion of the shots that they allow, and the 8th lowest opponent efficiency on threes this season. So I know it's an issue. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that over the course of the year it might be nice, but in a lot of their losses it's been a problem. And 15 of 41 for Brooklyn is certainly a problem. Beyond that, and KD kind of said this, I don't feel like the Suns played some sort of bad basketball game. I told you guys that Brooklyn, with the emotions of tonight, and that was even before I knew the Big Three would debut, with the rest advantage and how they've been playing lately, was a trap game. I was right. The Suns were favored by 4.5 going into the game. I checked it right before tip. That felt wrong to me. I know you get a few points for being the home team, but still, that means they were probably favored to win. I think in the NBA, it's 3 or 3.5 for home court advantage. So that means that the books were still expecting, the markets were still expecting the Suns to win. I know this is very deep betting tangent, but the point is that didn't feel right to me, and I said it to you guys, and it ended up coming true. I didn't want it to. I'm not sitting here taking a victory lap about it, but this team's good. So sometimes it just comes down to that stuff. The Suns got some actually cheap points early in this game because Claxton got called for 2 defensive 3 seconds. There was another one later on. I believe it might have been Sharp. And so that's 3 points in addition that kind of were free for the Suns. You had, I think the final component would just be the rotation, the personnel. And again, not an excuse, but Yusuf Nurkic postgame talked about how if they could have played a little faster, he feels like things would have clicked better. I would agree. That Pistons game, when all 3 of this Big Three played together, they were, scored 40 points in that first quarter. And it was in large part because they were just running. They were just downhill constantly. Booker, when I asked him about that, said his mentality is always to run, but they didn't do that tonight. So you look at that and, okay, that's part of it. But again, they scored decently anyway. And so again, to wrap up on the personnel side of things, they had to start Chimezie Metu. I don't think they had to. They chose to start Chimezie Metu. I thought, especially in the beginning of the second quarter when he was playing center, there were 2 closeout situations where his defensive effort was not what it needed to be. There was a missed switch by Nasir Little and Devin Booker, but it was, I believe, Little's mistake that led to a layup, and I believe that's 8 points off of defensive mistakes in the beginning of that second quarter. So when you look at personnel, those mistakes happen because the best players aren't on the court. More young guy minutes than you would like. Then Nasir Little has to go to the locker room, so they play Keita Bates-Diop. He's up and down. I thought he made some decent effort plays at the end of that game, but he wasn't probably supposed to even really play tonight, and he ends up having to play 12 minutes and close the game. Because Eubanks doesn't work, they don't start Metu to start the second half. Little starts the second half. And it's like, okay, Little was playing well, so maybe it's that. He made his threes. He played with the intensity you want. He did have the defensive mistake, but he also had 3 assists. I think he was good in transition. Okay, makes sense. But what you realize is actually, Metu is more, he's not starting the second half because they want him as a front court option when they have to go small because Eubanks is not going to see the floor. All right. So it's the domino effect, the trickle down of Allen and Gordon still being out and Eubanks being not playing well. So that's the other thing I would say is the reason the Suns lost this game. But those are all things on the margins. And look, they only lost by 4, so that makes sense. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about Jordan Goodwin. And for old time's sake, one final time, Bridges Breakout Watch. Next. First, today's show brought to you by Dave.com. If you have not heard of Dave, I would love to tell you about Dave. At one time or another, we all need a little financial help, and that's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less with no credit check and no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account where you can advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. You can even build credit when you do settle up on time. Millions of people have downloaded the Dave app to make their finances easier, so if you're in a pinch, get the help you need by downloading Dave. Download Dave today at dave.com/lockedonnba. That's dave.com/lockedonnba. Up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/lockedonnba. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Let's close out the show. Usual recap segments. I wanted to give you a box score oddity. I just don't feel like I have one because, again, this game was closer than you think. So I think the box score oddity that I would probably give if I was going to is that the Nets were really good in transition off misses by the Suns. So those 3-point misses doubly killed the Suns. They were 9 of 28 overall from deep, missed 19 threes, and the Nets were able to score 2 points per possession on those, meaning you can equate live rebounds when the Nets chose to run off of those to a layup or a dunk or whatever. I mean, those aren't even 2 points per possession. Like a good shooter shooting an open three, basically. A really good shooter. You know, Steph Curry shooting a wide open three was what the Nets got in transition. So there's your box score oddity. But the other thing real quick, young forward breakout watch, and then we will close with another breakout watch, the OG of all breakout watches to wrap up. Let's talk about Jordan Goodwin because Josh Okogie missed this game with a right hip injury that he suffered in that Golden State game on Tuesday night, and I'm going to just keep shouting it until I'm validated. I think Jordan Goodwin is a better fit for this roster and this rotation than Josh Okogie. Goodwin had about as good of a 1 of 6 from the field, 1 assist, 2 turnover game as I can think of. I know he was minus 19. I know he was also on the court during that beginning of the second quarter moment that I talked about and some of these other up and down stretches for the Suns. He was on the court a lot of those minutes when Booker was not. But when he plays with the best players, when he plays with the other stars specifically, okay, so don't take me out of context or misinterpret. I'm not saying everything he did was good, but I think when he plays with those guys, like that's why on the preview show for the audio feed today, I said I thought they would start him. Before we knew that Eric Gordon was going to be out, I thought Goodwin should just maybe start because I knew that the Nets were going to have Cam Thomas and Mikal Bridges, both capable of creating high-level offense, Dinwiddie, and I thought they needed that. And lo and behold, they did because Goodwin closed the game. And he just has, I think, what it really comes down to is a better feel. And I mean that actually on both ends, to be honest with you. I think Okogie physically is more overwhelming, but Goodwin's not far off there, and I just think he plays with a better sense of the moment and feel for what needs to happen. And, of course, offensively, better passer, better ball handler, better shooter. Offensively, I don't think it's close. So you just saw, and I think the last thing I would say there, too, is those stars like him and seem to trust him, and I think Vogel trusts him, Goodwin. So it's not to say that's not the case with Okogie, but I think he is a much bigger wild card where He'll kind of freelance. You don't really know, is he in the dunker spot? Is he in the corner? Is he cutting? Is he just sort of there? Is he going to shoot? Is he not going to shoot? It's just a big question mark, and Goodwin just doesn't have that. So there you go. Young forward breakout watch. And I call Goodwin a forward, but, whatever. Mikal Bridges breakout watch. Man, it has been a long time. Made me really emotional to watch the tribute video. And I was just, I guess, again, in my feelings, and also, again, trying to make sense of those feelings. Why do I care? Why do I care? Why do we care so much? And Book was basically asked that question by Dwayne Rankin of the Arizona Republic post-game. Like, why do you think the fan base reacted so strongly to Mikal and Cam? And, a little bit of a, not for a half-hour NBA podcast conversation, but, I do think Book's point of how well-spoken and well-educated those two guys are goes a long way. They're just the types who are fine in front of a camera and have a good head on their shoulders. That goes a long way. We can beat around the bush, or we can just say that that's a fact. But beyond that, what I found myself thinking is they are just exactly what you would want to root for. I mean that in sort of in every sense of it, right? As players, they fit on any roster. I mean, what Cam Johnson has to do in Brooklyn is so far from what he had to do when he was running off complicated sets and getting fed by Chris Paul in Phoenix to start his career. What he's doing now is kind of the polar opposite of that, in terms of has to be more opportunistic and everything else, and he's not running stuff as much. Mikal Bridges is about as perfect of a glue guy and has exceeded beyond that as you could craft in a laboratory. But their mentality as well, stepping into a situation that it's easy to forget. Mikal Bridges was drafted when Igor Kokoshkov was still the coach of this team. He didn't play to start his rookie year much and had to go through that entire thing all over again with Monty Williams. Lost minutes to Kelly Oubre, to Trevor Ariza, And then suddenly, during a road trip in January of 2020, basically, December 19 into January 20, blew up, earned a starting spot, and somehow became a young leader of this team. Cam Johnson gets drafted the next summer and works his way into the rotation and becomes a difference maker. Dunks on PJ Tucker in the finals, and it's off to the races with him as well. But those guys were just as big of a part culturally and mindset-wise of turning this whole thing around as, not as anybody. Obviously, Book and Chris and Monty probably are at the top of that list, but young dudes fighting for their place in the league, buying into all that stuff and rising above the junk that they had to is not common. They obviously cared about the community and the fan base, and they were good sports about all that stuff. The lemonade stand, the softball game, all the things that they did here, that all matters. And then for me too, I don't know how much you guys necessarily care, but I guess you do. You're listening. It's a freaking blessing to get to cover those dudes. Honestly, I mean, I got to bring Cam Johnson onto this podcast twice. I got to write my first ever long profile of an athlete on Mikal Bridges for BrightsideOfTheSun.com. I got to write a second profile of Bridges when he leveled up his game last season for the team website. I got to ask Cam Johnson about the medical red flags at Summer League of 2019, which he didn't play in. and hear the disdain in his voice for the doubt that all those other teams felt about him and set the record straight effectively. Like, it's something I'm never going to forget. And it super meaningful to me as a person who cares about this team, as a reporter getting to cover an upstart developing team that, I mean, if this team doesn't get better, I don't know what I'm doing right now. It's not like I even do this full time now. So those guys played a huge part in that. And I mean, if you're on YouTube, you see Mikal's jersey behind me every day. It's not exactly a surprise. But, you know, at some point we got to put these memories to bed a little bit, and it's cool that they came back. I think this will kind of, you know, end the chapter, so to speak, because they don't play for this team anymore. You know, hopefully we're on our way to Bradley Beal and Nasir Little and Grayson Allen and Yusuf Nurkic, you know, making their own memories for this group and being fan favorites and developing that history too. But, I mean, that group, the way that it built up, made the finals, showed us what they showed us. It doesn't get much better than that. And you do the trade. I'm never going to back off that. You do the trade. You always do the trade. But you can also love the stuff that left. So if I know a lot of people were in the building tonight. I know a lot of people made a point of being in the building tonight. I'm glad you guys did. I won't forget the tribute video and kind of the environment, the atmosphere. And, you know, goodbye. Goodbye to Mikal and Cam. Goodbye to the twins. Gone but not forgotten. And I guess that's that. All right. That'll wrap us up for the day. Aaron Edwards to close out the week on Friday. Talk about what we saw from the Big Three and what we need to see from them against New York and Washington over the weekend. So look forward to that show. Don't forget to sign up for Locked On Suns Insider text alerts, and I will catch you guys tomorrow.